very short wreath laying service. The order of wreaths, the order of ceremony today, the bugler will play, the trumpeter will play last post, and then we'll have a minute's silence, and then we'll have reveille. After reveille, Harry will be going up to lay the wreath first of all, on behalf of Bomber Command, absolutely right and proper for your fallen comrades and all those people. And then I'll be going up on behalf of the Royal Air Force River Club, and then Commodore James will then be going up to lay on behalf of the Air Force. And then please do lay your wreaths after that. Very short service, very dignified, and remembering the fallen.
morning, everyone. Welcome on this beautiful morning to this magnificent memorial and our very unofficial act of remembrance. We, the Support the Bomber Command Memorial Facebook group, started what has become an annual event 3 years ago. The gathering that day was made up of a small group of our members, but it swelled to the numbers you can see here this morning. And we thank you very sincerely for taking the time to come and commemorate the sacrifice and service of friends and family. Our group came into being when the Memorial Committee was petitioning for its construction and attempting to raise funds for its building. The group was set up by Sam S. Benson, who led the PR team which helped win the planning permission for the memorial and then with the fundraising. And I'm the other group admin. This morning we have readings. We have Simon, Naomi, Nicola and Chris. Chris's reading is not in the programme due to my oversight, I'm afraid, but we welcome her this morning. The Facebook, before we carry on, I'll just let you know that the Facebook group has another area of interest now besides this wonderful memorial, and that is the new Memorial and Education Centre being built in Lincoln as we speak. It will be a memorial to all of those who served in Bomber Command, and also it will be an archive and education centre. So if any of you have any information, logbooks, photographs, they will be happy to have them scanned so they can keep them for the education of future generations. And with that, I'm going to ask Nicola to do the first reading. Nicola.
Just testing, right, okay. The Bombers by Sarah Churchill. Whenever I see them ride on high, gleaming and proud in the morning sky, or lying awake in bed at night, I hear them pass on their outward flight. I feel the mass of metal and guns, delicate instruments, deadweight tons, awkward, slow, bomb racks full, straining away from downward pull, straining away from home and base, and try and see the pilot's face. I imagine a boy who's just left school, on whose quick-learned skill and courage cool depend the lives of the men in his crew and success of the job they have to do. And something happens to me inside that is deeper than grief, greater than pride. And though there is nothing I can say, I always look up as they go on their way and care and pray for everyone and steel my heart to say, thy will be done.
And we have a slight change to the programme. It's going to be Naomi next.
Hello. The People's Monument. When you look upon this monument and see the concerned, tired faces, do you think it's for some large number of airmen of a long ago war? They had bright hopes for a future and love. A cheery grin, they laughed and made a smile. A moment later they were gone, just a number in a file. Look upon your brother, look upon your son, for these bronzes of long dead airmen above were such as those young men you love. The schools they went to have long forgotten them, no memories of their childhood remain. No parents now hold their memory or their name. Their young lives so full of promise and hope, no children to remember their tapestry and dream. Keep their life in their hearts with love supreme. This bronze stares down on our green and pleasant land. Imagine 125,000 young courageous men, flying with fear, fighting for our freedom then. Now look again, as 55,573 fade from your view. Hear their screams as fire and flak their bodies batter, tears limb from limb across many countries scatter. When you turn away, will you feel their hopes and dreams? See the great coat flap in the breeze and you? Will you remember their long lost, will you? Look upon your brother, look upon your son, for these statistics of long dead men above were just such as those young men you love. Listen for that stillness, for in it you will hear their laughter, their joy of life and love so dear. Do you feel it? Keep the memory, hold it near, for now you are the one who has your life and freedom because of them. They played their part, so hold their memories close in your heart. And look upon your brother, look upon your son, for these long dead airmen above were such as those young men you love. And I wrote this for those who have no one alive now that remembers the tapestry of their young short lives or the sound of their laughter.
This account I'm going to read is the account of pilot Frank Lowe, who was my father's pilot. And this is the account of their aircraft when it was shot down. The trip across the North Sea was unusually quiet. We saw some flak over Heligoland and a few searchlights further south. I found out why it was so quiet several weeks later. There had been a general recall because of bad weather coming in over England. Unfortunately, my pupil wireless op did not get the message, so we blithely carried on. It was a dark night, with rather poor visibility, so we had to rely on dead reckoning to decide when we crossed the coast, and it was time to turn to starboard to fly parallel to the River Elbe. A few minutes later, a burst of tracer from below shot up in front of me, hitting the fuselage between the cockpit and the front engine. A second burst hit the port engine. There was an immediate fire, both in the forward fuselage and in the engine. I gave the order to abandon aircraft. By this time, flames were licking into the cockpit, so I opened up the top hatch, released my harness, unplugged my intercom and struggled out with immense difficulty because of the slip steam. Then I got caught on the radio mast, with my head and arms on one side and my legs on the other. The aircraft was now well alight, and I was convinced that even if I did manage to wriggle off the mast, I should hit the tail and break my back. Fortunately, I squirmed free and missed the tail. I pulled the ripcord and the chute opened okay. I saw the blazing aircraft hit the ground and its load of incendiaries burning. The landing was heavy as it was too dark to judge my height above the ground during those last few seconds, and I badly sprained one ankle. I hid my parachute in a ditch. I started walking, but very soon realised that I should have to rest my ankle, so I took refuge in a small barn, where I was found by a policeman soon after daylight. I was taken to the crash site where I saw the pitiful remains of the three of my crew. I also met the pilot of the ME-110, fitted with Schrager music, responsible for our downfall. I was then put into the truck where I found my real gunner, my father, who had bowed out but suffered a broken leg on landing. The third survivor of the total crew of 6, the second pilot, Patrick Langford, had been taken to hospital with burns. He reached Sagan about a month after I did. He was one of the 50 who were shot on Hitler's orders after the Great Escape from Luft 3. They took the air gunner to the hospital and me to the local aerodrome. From there I was taken to Dulag Luft near Frankfurt. I was there for about a fortnight, the first week in solitary, before being transferred with others to Sagan. That must have been about the 3rd week in August. I'd just like to say at this point, the other 3 members of the crew who died, one of the young men was all the way from New Zealand. It was his first op, and he never went home. This is Chris.
All of us here today are here for a reason. Whether you've come to view the Bomber Command Memorial because you were passing, or whether you have made a special journey to remember a family member. For whatever reason you're here today, you will no doubt find yourself reflecting on young lives lost. Personally, I reflect on the devastating effect it had on my mother's life to lose her only brother at 21 years of age, and to my grandmother, already widowed very young when her children were small, to then lose her only son, just because his country was at war with another. As a child, and even now, I mourn the loss of a figure who would have been an uncle to me, and maybe given me cousins to grow up with. Your own experience may be similar to mine or very different, but the thing we have in common is a yearning for peace. Peace from further war in our world, and peace in our hearts to heal the wounds of our emotions, whatever they may be. And I'd like to read the words of a hymn entitled, "For What Shall We Pray?" What shall we pray for those who died, those on whose death our lives relied? Silenced by war, but not denied, God, give them peace. What shall we pray for those who mourn friendships and love, their fruit unborn? Though years have passed, hearts still are torn. God, give them peace. What shall we pray for those who live tied to the past they can't forgive, haunted by terrors they relive? God, give them peace. What shall we pray for those who know nothing of war and cannot show grief or regret for friend or foe? God, give them peace. What shall we pray for those who fear that war in some guise may reappear, looking attractive and sincere? God, give them peace. God, give us peace, and more than this, show us the path where justice is, and let us never be remiss working for peace.
Before Simon does his final reading and the exhortation, we have a little time, and I was wondering if there's anyone here would like to say a few words about their own loved one who they may have come to commemorate today.
Morning. I'd just like to ask you to remember today the crew of Lancaster ND 474 was lost on a raid to Stuttgart on the 15th of March 1944. The pilot was Thomas Wall and his crew was Bill Hardy, Ronnie O'Hoole, John Knowles, Douglas Burbeck, John Wise and my uncle Terry McAneny. Would also ask you to remember the people of Bolston in southern Germany who removed the crew from the broken Lancaster and buried them in their churchyard and looked after their graves for 4 years until they were moved to Dumbach, just south of Munich. We'll be forever grateful to the people in that little village who in time of war could stand back from all the carnage and looked at the 7 young crew and took them into their hearts and remember them even now 70 years on. We, the relatives of the crew, remain forever grateful to them for their kindness in such a time of war. We'd also like you to remember the squadron they served with, the 49 Squadron, who suffered heavy losses along with all squadrons in Bomber Command. Today, if we can just stand in silence as we will at 11 o'clock and reflect on that, but also remember, as I said, the people in southern Germany who looked after our relatives. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to share a story? Yeah.
I'm here because of my uncle. He was a member of 57 Squadron. He was lost on the night of 8th and 9th of April 1942 with his crew. The entire crew are still missing. There's a wreath at the end, over there, where all the crew are listed. There were 2 people from the Commonwealth. The pilot was Australian, but he had joined the Royal New Zealand Air Force. The observer came from New Zealand also. The youngest person on the plane was just 19. He was the rear gunner. He lied about his name and his date of birth and his age to sign up for the RAF. I've been searching for the plane for 5 years. I traced the families, and I was able to reunite the family of the rear gunner to his records because they were looking for his correct details. And so now that was something I was very pleased to do, and I was able to meet the family at the unveiling. The oldest person on the plane was just 28. They're all young men, they're barely out of school. And my uncle was terrified. The last view of my uncle that my father had when my father was about 13 was that he was terrified. He used to smoke, his hands were covered with nicotine stains because he was so scared. This is what these young men suffered, night after night. And would we do it now? I don't know. And we just need to remember their sacrifice.
My great uncle was in the flight that Robert just touched on, Ronnie Hall, so I read this poem last year and the year before that, so I'll probably do it next year as well. This is called High Flight by John Gillespie McGee, who's part of the RCAF. Oh, I have slipped the surly bonds of earth and danced the skies on laughter's silvered wings. Sunward I've climbed and joined the tumbling mirth of sun-split clouds and done 100 things you have not dreamed of, wheeled and soared and swung high in the sunlit silence. Hovering there, I've chased the shouting wind along and flung my eager craft through footless halls of air. Up the long, delirious, burning blue, I've topped the windswept heights with easy grace, where never lark nor even eagle flew. And while, with silence, lifting mind I've trod the high, untrespassed sanctity of space, put out my hand and touched the face of God.
Thank you. Good morning. I'm here to remember my father. He was part of the crew of the Lancaster MD-764, which was shot down over at Hobbs on the evening of 9th and 10th of June 1944. Killed in action were the pilot officer Giddings, Flight Sergeant Clements, Pilot Officer Webb, Flight Officer McGill, and John Seal, Flight Sergeant. My father evaded capture and was returned to England a couple of months later, and the rear gunner, Bob Bethel, was a prisoner of war at the end of the war.
Now we're going to get back to our last reading and then the exhortation before the silence. Thank you.
This is something I stumbled across the other day, and for me it was the epitome of all those wonderful men and women who contributed to the war effort. It is the citation from the London Gazette for an award for the piece of the most utmost gallantry and bravery. The King has been graciously pleased to confer the Victoria Cross on the undermentioned officer in recognition of most conspicuous bravery. Pilot Officer Cyril Joe Barton, 168669, Royal Air Force Volunteer Reserve, Squadron 578, deceased. On the night of the 30th of March, 1944, Pilot Officer Barton was captain and pilot of a Halifax aircraft detailed to attack Nuremberg. When some 70 miles short of the target, the aircraft was attacked by Junkers 88. The burst of fire from the enemy made the intercommunication system useless. One engine was damaged when a Messerschmitt 210 joined in the fight. The bomber's machine guns were out of action and the gunners were unable to return fire. Fighters continued to attack the aircraft as it approached the target area. And in the confusion caused by the failure of the communication system at the height of the battle, a signal was misinterpreted and the navigator, air bomber and wireless operator left the aircraft by parachute. Pilot Officer Barton faced a situation of dire peril. His aircraft was damaged, his navigational team had gone, and he could not communicate with the remainder of the crew. If he continued his mission, he would be at the mercy of hostile fighters when silhouetted against the fires in the target area, and if he survived, he would have to make a 4.5-hour journey home on 3 engines across heavily defended territory, determined to press home his attack at all costs. He flew on and, reaching the target, released the bombs himself. As Pilot Officer Barton turned for home, the propeller of the damaged engine, which was vibrating badly, flew off. It was also discovered that 2 of the petrol tanks had suffered damage and were leaking. Pilot Officer Barton held to his course and without navigational aids and in spite of strong headwinds, successfully avoided the most dangerous defence areas on his route. Eventually he crossed the English coast, only 90 miles north of his base. By this time the petrol supply was nearly exhausted. Before a suitable landing place could be found, the port engine stopped. The aircraft was now too low to be abandoned successfully. Pilot Officer Barton therefore ordered the 3 remaining members of his crew to take up their crashed stations. Then, with only 1 engine working, he made a gallant attempt to land clear of the houses over which he was flying. The aircraft finally crashed. Pilot Officer Barton lost his life, but his 3 comrades survived. Pilot Officer Barton had previously taken part in 4 attacks on Berlin and 14 other operational missions. On one of these, 2 members of his crew were wounded during a determined effort to locate the target despite the appalling weather conditions. In gallantly completing his last mission in the face of almost impossible odds, this officer displayed unsurpassed courage and devotion to duty. We have a moment to ponder, and I will shortly read the exhortation. Thank you.
We have a couple of minutes. Is there anybody want to come forward with any stories or memories of their loved ones? If you do, please do.
When I read the poem, I didn't say the 3 names at the bottom of it, but actually they were 3 cousins. Richard is my father. He survived the war but died shortly afterwards, which is actually something that happened to many of the bomber crews. The stresses and strains of what they lived through caused them many illnesses of heart failure and cancer. Alec Buckingham was ground crew. He survived and he actually lived to an old age. Out of the three of them, he was the only one that had a full life. Edward was killed in 1941. All three of them had joined up together, so you can imagine the family's distress at seeing them all go off to war at the same time.
I know Nicola earlier was talking about the stresses that the war had left on some of the men. I know my own father, as three of his crew were lost in the fire on board his aircraft. My mother would say that years later, he would still wake in the night sweating because he could hear the screams of his comrades. And this is the sort of after effects that these men would suffer for years and years. And that is something we do tend to forget. We talk about those who gave their lives, but for many their lives were never the same who came home.
They shall grow not old as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
When you go home, tell them of us and say, for your tomorrow, we gave our today.
Thank you. If anyone would like to place tributes, wreaths, crosses, please come forward and do so now.
soundtrack of people on a bombing race, and you can hear the flak, and you can hear what the pilot is saying. So if you want to come closer, just listen, it's a bit quiet.
Couple of thousand. Yeah, they're searching for it. Bastards. Oh, hell. Certainly illuminates things, doesn't it? Sure does. There's a fight. Keep their eyes peeled. Yeah. They're firing at us now. Are they? Yeah. Coming close. Okay. Close. Well, it's coming close. I can feel it. Yes, I can see it. Round the port of it, it's heading, it's coming up. Okay. If we press on a bit this way, we might get out. Yeah. Hey, my God. You light your fag on any of those? Oh! That's a bit close. I think we've been hit personally. Yeah, there's a bit of height here. Yeah. That was close. Yes. Searchlight looking for us now. Okay, I'm pressing on more or less on course. Right it now. Gone out now. So we better press on north until we're clear of this issue. Yeah, that's what I'm doing. Hello, skipper. We've been holding the front here. Okay. Oil's leaking out of the front carriage, so there's nothing to worry about. Okay. Okay, boy. Dougie, could you glance over the temperatures on the engine? Could I what? Glance over the temperatures. Look at Dougie, I've been weaving on your course. I shall be heading a little to the east. Okay, I'll give you a course to steer if you reckon you'll go through it. Yeah, it's... Okay, right. There's a few searchlights ahead, about 100. Yeah. Alright, good, I've never seen anything like this before in a life. 4,000 pounds have just gone up. Yeah, it's good sure. That's not bad at all. Yeah, it's not a bad prank.
That was a recording of a crew just after they'd dropped their bombs from a raid over Essen. I think it gives a bit of an insight into what they had to do every night. Lastly, I'd like to thank you all for coming today. In the words of Jim Dooley, who was at the forefront of the movement to get this memorial built, it righted a wrong. And I'd like to thank you all for you playing your part in continuing to right a wrong by coming and helping us honour the brave men of Bomber Command today. Thank you very much. Thank you.